Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. We had plans to talk about the sleepers on defense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for upcoming training camp, but a little bit of breaking news got in the way. As you see on the graphic here, Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end Rob Gronkowski announced his retirement about an hour and a half before the show today. He spent 2 seasons with the Bucs, obviously had a Hall of Fame career before that with the Patriots, included that with the Bucs in 2 years, winning them a Super Bowl. But that's a big shakeup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading into training camp. Gronk retires. We will discuss all of that on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is SR Scott Reynolds of PewterReport.com. Scott, how you doing today? You a little surprised? What's the feeling right now?
Well, the feeling is this is the show we didn't want to do. We did not want to have to do the show. We wanted to do a Gronk resigns with Bucs show at some point in time. That's kind of the premise we've been operating under, and not just Pewter Report, but also a lot of people in the media, certainly the local media, anticipating Gronkowski's return, especially since Tom Brady came out of retirement. But listen, I was one of those. Matt, I think you were too, right?
Hand up. We both said Gronk was coming back. It was almost expected. That was the prediction. If you go back to our podcast from a couple of days ago, we talked about where the Bucs offensive skill players match up against players from the rest of the league at their position. And I included Gronk in there because I thought Gronk was coming back, but nonetheless, it was not the case.
Yeah. And I think what's surprising about this is the fact that the Buccaneers, their roster is a little bare, certainly in the experience standpoint, with just Cameron Brate being the lone veteran on the team. When you look at Brate, 31, he'll be 31 in July, so about 2 weeks from now. And his skill set's diminished. He's a fantastic team player. Still a red zone weapon for the Buccaneers, but just not even near the class of Gronkowski in terms of being a weapon in the passing game. The Buccaneers, they addressed the tight end position twice in the draft, drafting Cade Otton in the 4th round. He's coming off of ankle surgery, and so we really haven't seen much of Otton. Didn't participate in the OTAs, the rookie minicamp, the mandatory minicamp. Then in the 6th round, they traded to get Kieft from Minnesota, more of a blocking tight end. And Gronkowski is 1 part blocker, 1 part receiver. And that's that's something that the Buccaneers are going to miss, having that complete tight end. They hope Otton can be that player. I don't think he's going to come close to that his rookie season. And Brate certainly not the caliber of blocker that Gronkowski is. So I think they're going to be signing a veteran tight end that certainly would behoove the team to do so, because right now you've got Otton, you've got Brate, you've got Kieft. We talked about Cody McElroy, whose chances of making the team certainly were aided by the news.
A couple of thoughts went through my mind when Gronk first retired. A couple of minutes later, one of my thoughts was Cody McElroy's got to be fist pumping somewhere because his chances of making the team just went up a lot more. We're going to get into a lot of how this affects the Bucs moving forward. And there's no replacing Rob Gronkowski. And I think you're going to see a little bit of that with, as you mentioned, Kieft going to be more of the blocking side that the Bucs really benefited from Gronk. Where Cade Otton and Cam Brate, for sure, more of the receiving side of Gronk. We already got a super chat in here from William Butler. Will, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. He says, I'm stressing. Please name some possible tight ends we can sign. Thanks for bringing that up. We are going to get into that later in the show. We'll get to that in a little bit. I do just want to stay for a moment on just the career of Gronk, or the Bucs career of Rob Gronkowski, because we always talk about how Tom Brady, really changed the franchise when he came here 2 seasons ago. But Gronk was a big part of that too. I'll just rattle off some of his stats here. He played 2 seasons with the Bucs, had 100 receptions for 1,425 yards, 13 touchdowns. His 2020 year played in all 16 games, which is very impressive in its own, considering his injury history, and he was a year away from the game. That season, he had 45 receptions for 623 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. 2021 played in 12 games, had 55 receptions for 802 yards. So played in less games, but had more receiving yards and had 6 touchdowns. So just one shy of what he did in 2020. And of course, his pivotal moment in the playoffs, while the numbers weren't necessarily there for both seasons, he saved the best for last in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs, where the Bucs were victorious. He had 6 receptions for 67 yards and coined the phrase two tutties. So
yeah,
I just think the importance of Gronk. I remember going back to his first year when he came out of retirement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those first couple of games, Scott, it took him a bit going.
Yeah.
Every time Gronk speak coined new phase, he had I'm a blocking tight end, baby, because that's all he was doing in the beginning.
That's right.
But that was still valuable to the Bucs. And then he really picked it up as a receiver. You saw in the second half of the 2020 season, it started to look like the Gronk of old. Maybe a step slower, of course, because he was, getting up there in age. He's 33 years old now that he retired. But you start to see the Gronk that we kind of were hoping for, or what Bucs fans were dreaming of when Gronk first agreed to the trade, but agreed to keep playing football and come to the Bucs. And then the following year, I think we really saw that Gronk up until his rib injury, and even after. I mean, 802 yards for a guy that was 2 seasons ago, wasn't even playing football, wasn't even thinking about it. So I just want to, give a shout out to Gronk for a great year, and especially with the 2 seasons with the Bucs.
No doubt about it. And I think that the thing that fans need to consider too is Gronk's 33. His body's taken a ton of punishment. He has had a ton of surgeries. His elbow, his arm. He came to the Buccaneers still kind of nursing that quad injury that he suffered in the Super Bowl when he beat the Rams, and he and the Patriots beat the Rams. Then he sat out and retired that 2019 season. And listen, he broke some ribs last year, and he punctured his lung, and he came back and played through that. And listen, that was not fully healed. Like, that healed enough for him to play, but every time, he would block or hit the ground, whatever, he felt it. I mean, and that's not an injury that's going to completely heal. You're going to be pain-free until the offseason. And his body has just taken some punishment. And you've seen a slew of Gronk commercials, right? I mean, his Gronk persona is popular. His brand is hot. It still is. And he's an engaging personality. He did Gronk Beach over the offseason draft weekend out there in Las Vegas. He's a highly marketable guy. He doesn't need football when it comes to money. He's saved every single penny he's made. And he's made over $9 million the last couple of seasons with the Buccaneers.
Scott,
so he's lived off of his endorsement money.
Yeah.
So he's got a ton of money saved up.
Scott, I still have it stuck in my head. I think it's the USAA, the insurance, and he's got that commercial. He's like, busted. This is Super Bowl champion Rob Gronkowski. I'm not a member. And I have that stuck in my head from all the commercials that he's done. And that's a whole big part of this, is that Gronk never needed to play. He didn't need to come out of retirement in the first place, but he did. Right. But even going into last season, whether or not he was going to decide to play, and going into this offseason, Gronk doesn't need the money. Even now that he's retired, we're going to see him on a TV somewhere soon. He's going to be hosting some show. He did a little commentary for Fox in his brief retirement. I'm willing to bet Fox is already on the phone being like, hey, Rob, why don't you come back?
Oh, yeah.
Tom's going to be here in a season or two. We can link you guys up back together again. So while it might be the last of Gronk in the NFL, he's not going to be far from our TVs. It might not even be the last of Gronk in the NFL. And I hate to do this. I hate to already talk about.
We have to talk about it, Matt, because Tom asks, any chance he unretires before training camp and pulls a Tom Brady? I think if he was going to pull a Tom Brady, he would literally wait 40, 41 days and kind of report the first week into training camp, right? When the pads come on. I think if Rob Gronkowski is going to unretire, and listen, he is a practical joker. I don't know if you saw on social media, probably about a month ago, he pranked Tom Brady, right? Where he called Brady on FaceTime, and he said, hey, just returning your call. And Tom's like, I didn't call you. And he's like, yeah, you did. I'm returning your call, or something like that. Right. And he pranked him, and Brady was like laughing, and Gronk, of course, was like, ha, 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 laughing. And so it makes you wonder, Is Gronk pulling a practical joke here? Is he trying to do what Brady did? And is he going to come out and unretire? I'm back, baby. Like, if it was any other player, I would say no. But with Gronk, you have to put an asterisk by this, right?
And
I think
remember,
if we get into training camp and Gronk is not there, and what I mean by that is, we're 2 weeks into camp, I'm going to believe it then. But maybe he holds out and pulls an unretirement like Tom Brady.
And remember, pulled the little, it wasn't necessarily a prank, more of a joke with Leonard Fournette. When Leonard Fournette tweeted something along the lines of, who's going to be wearing my jersey in the stadium this year? And Gronk said something to the effect of, yeah, I'll be wearing a Lenny jersey, like sit in front row or whatever. That was before he announced his retirement. But Adam Schefter tweeted this about an hour ago. He said, in reaction to Rob Gronkowski's news, his agent Drew Rosenhack, it would not surprise me if Tom Brady calls him during the season to come back and Rob answers the call. This is just my opinion, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rob comes back during the season or next season. So that's the point I was trying to make of, I don't know if we can 100. I know it's so early because he just retired, but I think, halfway through the season, if something happens to one of the other tight ends and they're like, we really need you, Gronk, and you can almost guarantee that the Bucs are going to have a playoff spot, why not sign up for like 8 games or whatever it might be? I think if anyone can do it, it would be Tom Brady recruiting Rob Gronkowski. I think probably doesn't happen, but we all thought Gronk was going to come play the season and he didn't. So you never know.
Yeah, exactly. Andrew Epps states, Sue eliminating Bucs from contention, but still playing. Gronk retires. Is there a storyline we are missing? Feels like turbulence behind closed doors. I wanted to address this just because Gronk retiring is he's following Ali Marpet's lead, if anything else. And Ndamukong Suh, the Buccaneers were the ones that eliminated Suh from contention for returning. They drafted Logan Hall. They didn't sign Suh. They signed Akeem Hicks. They're the ones that didn't want Suh. Suh wanted to return to Tampa Bay, or at least I should say he was open to returning to Tampa Bay. He even kind of lobbied Todd Bowles a little bit once Bowles was made the head coach of the Buccaneers back in late March. But this is an instance where there's no drama. This is just simply Gronk's decision. Again, he sustained a serious rib injury. And before that, I mean, he retired because he got sick and tired of being hurt. And he takes a lot of punishment. He's 6'6", 265 pounds. Guys often go low at him to chop him down because he's just such a big dude. And he's 33. I mean, he's not 26, 27. He's not even 29 like Ali Marpet. He's played a long time. He is a future Hall of Famer. Like you said, Matt, he doesn't need any more money, certainly from the game of football. He's making enough money in endorsements. So I just think this is the timing. And I'm going to put an asterisk by it until the season rolls along. And like you said, Matt, maybe he even comes back later this year. You never know.
And if Gronk did, I think everyone would be so pumped about it. They would be energized. And I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that Celsius is the proud sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. And of course, Celsius has their Fast Brands protein bar. Guys, these protein bars, I had one right before the show.
I did too.
To get me ready, to get me full.
What did you have, Matt?
I had the white chocolate cookies and cream. So they have that flavor along with the salted caramel peanut crunch. Got 20 of protein, and the taste is delicious. There you go. Yeah, I got the white chocolate right there, cookies and cream, white chocolate. But not only is it great tasting, but it's got so many different uses for when you want to have it. If you want to have it right before you do your podcast, maybe you overslept and didn't have a chance to have breakfast before you go to work. It could be a nice little, pick me up before lunch, get you started with your day there. If you're going to the gym, need a little pre-workout snack before you go and pump iron. Gronk loves to pump iron. You can have it there too. There's multiple different ways to have this bar. You can mix it up for dessert if you want to have it as a replacement for ice cream. But if you want to have that ice cream, throw it in the microwave. Heat it up for a little bit, then mix it up with your ice cream. Versatility is key with Celsius, whether it's their energy drinks and all the different flavors or their Fast Brand protein bar. So make sure you check it out on Amazon or your local store near you. Celsius Fast Brand protein bars.
2 amazing flavors, and I had the salted caramel peanut crunch, delicious. That's the thing, folks. You're getting the protein 20 grams of protein, and the salted caramel and peanut crunch, only 2 grams of sugar. It tastes like a candy bar. It really does. It's
Yeah.
the best tasting protein bar on the market. So,
Abs-
we've got that big news today, the retirement of Rob Gronkowski. Let's take a real quick look, Matt, and I want to get your thoughts on who the Buccaneers have on their roster. Then we're going to spend some time looking at some of the free agent options available. I just put a story up on pewterreport.com. Matt, you want to dump that in the PR chat there? We'll talk about those players in just a minute. And of course, tomorrow we'll be talking about the Bucs camp sleepers on defense, the topic for today. But the big news, Rob Gronkowski retiring, we've decided to push that back, obviously, for tomorrow. But Cam Brate, Matt, he is 30. He'll be 31. His skill set has diminished, but the thing about Brate that makes him valuable, aside from being that red zone target that Tom Brady loves and trusts, is this guy he's a tutor. He's a mentor. He loves helping young players. And I think that's key, having not just a veteran who can, do things like block and catch, but a guy that's really invested, that knows this offense, that can help groom these young players, because that's something that Gronk did too for younger tight ends. Even Cam Brate learned things from Gronk, and why wouldn't he? Gronk's a future first ballot Hall of Famer. But what are your thoughts on Cam Brate being tight end 1? Does that concern you? Is that enough? I mean, this is a wide receiver driven offense, Matt. So it's not like Brate has to replace Gronk's numbers or even his targets. You might see Mike Evans get more targets now. You might see Chris Godwin and Russell Gage, and even wide receiver 4, whoever that's going to be, Brashard Perriman, Cyril Grayson, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson, Jalen Darden, whoever that 4th wide receiver is. They might get more targets, and this might be a more wide receiver driven passing attack than ever before.
Yeah, I think that's what you're going to see. I mean, there's no replacing Rob Gronkowski, so having Cam Brate in there is a step below, and that's no offense to Cam Brate. I mean, only 3 or 4 tight ends in this league right now can be held up in the same regard that Rob Gronkowski is. Cam Brate, you know what you're going to get with him. He's very steady Eddie. He had 30 receptions last year for 245 yards and 4 touchdowns. We all know his bread is buttered in the red zone. That's where he, is most helpful to this team.
Yeah.
Bit of a below average blocker, but as far as going into the beginning of the season or going through the whole season as the starter, I'm okay with it. I think it would help a lot if they do get a veteran presence. It's signing a tight end right before training camp, and we'll talk about that a bit later. I do want to point out, just here's some stats. Obviously Cam Brate was, and a little bit OJ Howard, but really Cam Brate was the de facto starting tight end when Gronk missed a couple games. The stats don't really jump out to you a ton. So in the game that Gronk got hurt against the Rams, Cam Brate ended up with 4 receptions for 35 yards. Next week at New England, he had 2 for 29. Then at Miami, 1 catch for 12 yards. Then at Philly, 3 for 26.
Right. And really the Philly game is where OJ Howard was kind of featured in that game,
Yeah. And then 2 catches for 15 yards against New Orleans in that loss on the road. And then on the loss to Washington, he had 1 catch for 6 yards and a touchdown. So there were 4 wins in there, 3 losses if you include the LA game when Gronk got hurt in the middle of it. With that said, the teams that they beat, New England, quality win, they made the playoffs, but Miami and Chicago, not necessarily the best. Philly was a playoff team. So can the Bucs get by without Gronk and with Cam Brate as your starter? Yeah, without question. Like you said, that's going to be more targets for Mike Evans. Maybe they get even more creative with Russell Gage than they had already planned to because they're going to rely on the receivers more. Tom Brady, obviously, you have to build up a lot of trust with Tom, so it's not going to happen overnight with Cade.
And you know what happened in New England when Brady didn't have that arsenal of wide receivers? The running backs got more catches, right? I mean, so the Leonard Fournette, Rashad White, they're going to be more involved, and so I think you're going to see those receptions, those targets that Rob Gronkowski has been receiving really kind of split up between the receivers and And of course, we'll talk about Cade Otton in a second here. We just now got a statement from Bucs general manager Jason Light that I'll read regarding Rob Gronkowski's retirement announcement. And I quote Jason. He says, "Rob is a true professional who left it all on the field for us the past 2 seasons and helped establish a championship culture in our building. He played a crucial role in our Super Bowl 55 championship season in 2020 and battled through a number of injuries last year while on the way to one of his most productive receiving yardage seasons in his 11-year career. It's always difficult to see a great player walk away from the game when he's still enjoying that kind of success. But the overwhelming emotions I feel today are gratitude and respect for one of the greatest tight ends who ever played the game. While his on-field accomplishments will surely earn him a gold jacket and a place in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it is his humble attitude and team-first approach to the game that truly defined his career." And Matt, you aptly said earlier in the show that when Rob Gronkowski was first in Tampa and was kind of acclimating himself to this offense, he joked that he was the blocking tight end in Tampa. That he didn't have those touchdowns with Tom Brady till later that season when their chemistry finally reignited. It's funny when Brady got here and the Bucs traded for Gronkowski, you kind of expected, because of their chemistry from their New England days, that they would pick up right where they left off and that Gronk would be targeted out of the gate. And I don't think he caught his first touchdown until maybe like week 5 or 6 or something. So, interesting comments there from Jason Light. I just wonder if this is for real or if this is a practical joke that's going to be coming. I'm going to say 75% retirement, 25% unretirement. I'm not sold at this point. We'll see.
You think he's going to end up on Jimmy Kimmel? Like this is a Jimmy Kimmel prank where, he had that going.
Exactly. Yeah. Who knows? Richard asks you, Matt, where would you fit Gronk's retirement into the top 10 offseason events that you did last week? You had that show on Thursday.
Yep.
Where would this rank in terms of the top 10 and which one would you take out to replace this? Or would you just say, screw it, we're going to go with 11?
No, this is a good question. Without a doubt, it would make the top 10 list. And I would probably take number 10 was Leonard Fournette re-signing with the Bucs, which isn't the craziest thing, but I think it was surprising in terms of one thing. Lenny was get the type of deal that he did with the year and $21 million, and kind of just thought that the Bucs were going to move on from Leonard because he wanted a contract that was too lucrative for what the Bucs were looking for. So that was more the surprise than anything. So if you take Lenny off the list and everyone else bumped up, I think I'd put Gronk in around 6. I think that's right around the Brady Arians rumors and Byron Leftwich going to Jacksonville to be the head coach and then just ended up not being the head coach. Because I think Gronk, we questioned all offseason while a lot of us predicted that Gronk would be back. I think we understand why Gronk retired, because he's 33 years old, because he accomplished so much with the Bucs. Like, I'm curious, if the Bucs didn't win that Super Bowl in his first season there, do you think Gronk comes back because he wanted to win a Super Bowl in Tampa? But they got that done like right away, where there's almost less of an incentive to come back. So I think I'd put that in at 6. I would have to revisit the list again. But it was definitely surprising, but his reasoning behind it and all the injuries that he's accumulated throughout the years, it's surprising, but it's not shocking, if that makes total sense. But good question.
Yes, it's there's a lot of love for Gronk. I mean, whether it's just his ability or his fun-loving personality, his greatness, right? I mean, those first 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl really sparked the Buccaneers to a massive 31-9 win at Raymond James Stadium. So we'll have to see what transpires, and if this is if this is indeed a retirement or if this is a practical joke that Gronk is playing. I'm leaving the door open. I'm cautiously optimistic, but again, I've got to report this as face value. Gronk's made the statement. The Buccaneers just came out in a statement, etc. Steve Munoz, super chat. We appreciate that $4.99
Thank you,
super
Steve.
chat.
Thank you.
Shout out to the greatest GM in Bucs history, Mr. Light. Trading a 4th rounder for Gronk was one of the best trades in Bucs history, and trading up for Wirfs. Also, remember, Jason Light traded a 3rd round pick for Jason Pierre-Paul, who helped the Bucs win a Super Bowl, went to a Pro Bowl during the Super Bowl season. So he's definitely made some great trades, great free agent acquisitions. Matt, you were talking about Shaquille Barrett as one of the best
free agent signings.
Best free agent signings, or Tom Brady's obviously there as well.
Outside of Tom.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying those two, that's a hell of a 1-2 punch right there. Brady and Shaq Barrett here recently. So Jason Light's done a hell of a job. This is a Super Bowl contending roster once again this year. And they'll have to, I think come away with another replacement.
But Jason's shown that he could prove that. I mean, look, when they lost to Alex Kappa and Ali Marpet, they traded for Shaq Mason. So
that's true.
Jason Light's shown that he's been able to adjust on the fly rather quickly and find that replacement or build the roster to the part that they want to get them to.
I was laughing because in the Pewter Report group chat, which is an absolute scream, by the way, like some of the content is R-rated, some of it is just not fit for print, but some of it's funny too. And we also put a lot of news in there from one another. It's kind of how we communicate. We don't have an office. We have remote offices, home offices. And Luke the Lifter, otherwise known as Luke Gedeke, the Bucs second-round pick, who's got a sense of humor, by the way, he tweeted at Rob Gronkowski, "I will take unlimited Gronk spikes to the head during training camp for you to return." So Gedeke never played with Gronkowski, but certainly was looking forward to it. He is willing to take unlimited Gronk spikes to the head during training camp for him to return. So that's pretty cool. That's a lot of love
guy. That's a team guy.
No doubt about it. So having said that, there's a potential, trade that can happen for a tight end. I wouldn't rule that out by Jason Light. As you mentioned, Shaq Mason, the latest addition via trade by Jason Light to the Buccaneers. But today we're going to focus on the free agents that are available. And there's not a whole bunch of quality free agents. I mean, if you're still on the free agent list in almost July, there's a reason. And so we're going to get into that. But let's first round out by talking about the remaining players. We talked about Cody McElroy and Cam Brate. Those are the two veterans. I put McElroy in there because he's 29. He knows the system. He's been in Tampa for 3 years, mostly on the practice squad. Only caught one pass, a 30-yarder back in 2019 against the Texans. We talked about that yesterday. So this team goes out there and drafts Cade Otton. And, he is a player that they like. They feel he can be an all-around tight end. He does have some blocking prowess. He's going to have to hit the weight room for sure and get bigger and stronger. But the thing that I noticed on tape from Cade Otton, Matt, is he's what I call a positional blocker, right? And I remember, back helping out, I even feel terrible saying this, helping out the offense when I coached Pop Warner football, because I'm a defensive guy. But I would tell the kids, listen, you can be a blocker. And, when people think block, they think about putting guys on their ass and pancaking. To block somebody means just to get in their way. And I think that's what Cade Otton did effectively at Washington, was he put himself in the right position to get in the way. And it kind of, he didn't blow holes open in the running game, but he opened creases, right? He did enough to, as a positional blocker, to position himself to, keep the defenders at bay and do his assignments, whether it be in pass blocking or in run blocking. And he was a pretty decent receiver. He's not going to, replace Gronkowski in that respect. You can see he wears number 87. I think that's probably in tribute to Gronkowski. A lot of college tight ends wear 87. But your thoughts on Cade Otton? We didn't get a chance to see him because he's sidelined coming off of that ankle injury that he suffered last year, had surgery on. But, all of a sudden right now, he's probably tight end number 2 as a rookie, is he not?
Yeah, I think he's got a great opportunity. We have to see him on the field, of course, during training camp, and hopefully he can get healthy soon enough. The Bucs knew about this injury, though. This isn't a surprise to anyone in the organization. He has a really great opportunity to be a presence in this offense and have an impact on the team. Even if Cam Brate's the number 1 guy, they're still going to do 2 tight end sets or goal line situations where Cade Otton can get there. He's got decent size and he's got a good arm length with that wingspan. where he's not, as you said, he can get in the way and kind of be there to block. He's not afraid to engage in blocking, though, which I think is really important. And one thing that the Bucs are definitely getting, I love the fact, too, that he doesn't wear gloves. He's just old school. I really like that.
Yep.
He's shown that he can catch the ball, didn't really have many dropping issues. But the one thing that the Bucs are definitely getting with Cade Otton is that he's a smart player. I mean, his dad was a coach. His grandfather was a coach. He's had football instilled in him from a very young age. So I think he's going to be able to figure out the playbook probably quickly than some of the other rookies on this team. I think he's going to be extremely coachable and do whatever the Bucs need him to do. And I think his role will change, maybe not in the first year, but throughout his career with the Bucs. They might ask him to, get face-to-face with an edge rusher a lot more this season. And then in a year from now, could be the number one guy who's going out and making those receptions that Gronk was asked to do next year. So I'm curious to see what kind of role that he'll have, but he's shown that he's solid at a couple of different things. I wouldn't necessarily put him one over the other, maybe a little bit better of a receiver than a blocker, but nonetheless, I think the Bucs liked him because he does a little bit of everything at the tight end position that Tampa Bay is really looking for, where Kieft, on the other hand, while he's made some nice catches in minicamp and OTAs, he's here to drive defenders into the ground. He's here to make, wow, what a photo. What a photo.
Yeah, he's got to keep growing that hair back, man. He has
that stopped me in my tracks when you transitioned to that photo.
You got intimidated by it, Matt. And when I was loading this picture in the StreamYard, I was intimidated by it too. I was like, holy crap, that's Kieft. Yeah.
He's going to be one of those guys. He's going to tell you that he's coming to block you on this play, and there's nothing you can do about it, damn
it. That's right, yeah.
You better get off the tracks when the train is coming through. That is Kieft, a.k.a. Chief Kieft. I think he's going to have maybe not as significant of a role that Cade Otton will have, but when he's in the game, it's clearly not going to be all-star levels, but when he's in the game, I think you're going to hear a little bit of the buzz from the crowd because you know that he's going to be in there, and he's in the offense to crack some skulls when he's leading the way, whether it's a running play or a passing play.
Yeah, I wonder if the chant for Kieft is going to be Co, right? Like if you're going to hear the crowd go Co, right? Or if it's going to be Kieft,
I think it's going to be Kieft. It's just a little easier to get going.
And I think that he is. I think that he is going to be a fan favorite if he makes this team, and really has some of those impact blocks, and can develop right as a receiver. He's got the ability to kind of come on the scene a little bit, and be more than like what Alan Cross was, as that third tight end, or certainly Anthony Auclair, some of those guys. So Gary Buff with the Braveheart reference, looking like William Wallace,
And you know what, Scott? If he does develop as a passer, I mean, starting or as a pass catcher, starting off, the odds for him scoring a touchdown will absolutely be through the roof. So he's a prime candidate for a guy that you might just want to sprinkle a little bit of money on to score a touchdown, get a big payday out of that. And the best place to go and do that would be at mybookie.ag. Sports is starting to dwindle down a little bit. We still got the Stanley Cup Finals going on. A huge win for the Bolts last night. Final score 6-2. They're right back in this Stanley Cup Final.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, that was awesome. You got the UFC going on most weekends. Golf just had the U.S. Open. That was a great finish. And, of course, you have baseball going on. In 162 games of a baseball season, it can feel like a grind to watch. I totally understand. But you can put the excitement back into each and every game with MyBookie. There's run lines, money lines, first inning, no runs, my favorite bet in all of sports, and props galore. Nobody gives you more opportunities to win than MyBookie. Getting started is simple. You deposit up to $1,000 and play with $500 instantly. Just use the promo code Pewter to claim a MyBookie deposit bonus. Whether you're a diehard fan or a newcomer to the sport, there's never been a better time to join the MyBookie family. Go ahead and sign up today using promo code Pewter to secure your first deposit bonus up to $1,000 with MyBookie. Whatever you put in, they'll meet halfway, all the way up to $1,000. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere with mybookie.ag. And again, that promo code is Pewter, Pewter, as you see at the top of the screen right there.
Yeah, I wonder, Matt, if they're going to have prop bets on if Gronk's going to return.
Wouldn't shock me.
To what team, would you be surprised if later in the season he returns and it's not necessarily to Tampa Bay?
The only team I could really actually, there's two teams I could see.
The Bengals. Right.
No, I was going to say the Bills. If something happens,
that's right.
Something happens there because he's a Buffalo guy, I think that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
so you're talking about like if they lost Dawson Knox, right?
Yeah. And Bucs fans would hate this. I could see him going to one of the LA teams. We've talked about how he does so many things outside of football with commercials and a little bit of acting and things like that.
Especially
if the Rams felt
Yeah.
they were one piece away and they said, hey, Gronk, we already know you're out in LA. You still get the warm weather that you got in Florida and a little bit of the Hollywood action. I could see that. And the Chargers, Justin Herbert's a very exciting quarterback to work with. I know they got some tight ends over there. But again, the location of being out there in Cali, I could see it. I still think the Bucs would be the leader in the clubhouse if he's going to return. But you never know.
You never know. That's right. So let's talk about some of these veteran free agents that are available. Some big names, but these are some aging names as well.
Yeah.
And we'll start with one of the older guys, Jimmy Graham, Chicago Bears. Graham, former New Orleans Saint, then spent some time with the Seattle Seahawks, a couple years with the Green Bay Packers, and he's 35 years old. He's just a shell of his former self, if I'm being honest. He, looking at what he did last year as the number 2 option for Chicago, and keep in mind they've got Cole Kmet, so his playing time was going to be diminished. But when you look at Jimmy Graham, 5-time Pro Bowler, the last time he made the Pro Bowl though was way back in 2017. So 14 catches, 167 yards, 3 touchdowns last year. That's a career low for Graham. That happened with the Bears. And he has not produced 500 yards receiving or more since the 2018 season. So this is a player that's just getting up there. He's made over $11 million combined over the past 2 seasons. So you're looking at a player that, at least in Chicago, commanded an average of about $5.5 million per year. I think the best option, if the Buccaneers are looking for a receiving threat, right? Because Cam Brate's not getting any faster. Kieft might be the guy that comes in and does some of that prerequisite blocking. But Jared Cook, right? Jared Cook is a player that still is cooking, pun intended, at age 35. And what I mean by that is last year for the Chargers, he caught 48 passes for 564 yards, a healthy 11.8 yard average, and 4 touchdowns. This is a 2-time Pro Bowler, made a Pro Bowl in 2019. That was his last time making the Pro Bowl. That was with New Orleans. The year before that, in 2018, he made the Pro Bowl with the Raiders, catching 68 passes for 896 yards and 6 touchdowns. Then he goes and has a Pro Bowl season with Drew Brees, where he caught 43 passes for 705 yards and 9 touchdowns. So Jared Cook is a player. If they're looking for a guy to step in and be just literally another weapon for Tom Brady in the passing game, that certainly is a name to remember. He can.
And Scott, he was a key contributor to the Bucs Super Bowl. He had that fumble that Antoine Winfield Jr. knocked out. There you go. Right on cue. Right, nicely done, Scott. Yeah. Right. Antoine Winfield Jr. knocked the ball out and changed the fortunes for the Bucs. They were reeling a little bit at that point, and then the turnovers got them back into the game, starting with Antoine Winfield Jr. forcing that fumble. I don't necessarily think that the Bucs should not sign him because of that one play.
Well, he's already helped them win once. So
yeah, I'm not sure if he got a ring or not for that. I don't know if the Bucs had a couple left over.
It might be a thing where if they want to sign Jared Cook, they say, we're going to include a Super Bowl ring for you if you take like $1 million less. So that might be in some of the negotiations there. So those are 2 options right there. Let's just stop and talk about the, Graham, 6'6", 255, 260-pound guy, and Cook, 6'5", 245. Not much in terms of blocking at this stage from either one of those guys. But if
Yeah.
you're looking for a receiver, especially Cook, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think the Buccaneers go with another type of receiver, knowing that Otton's a little, sight unseen, Brate is diminished? Or do you think they just say we're going to go with more of a blocking all-around tight end?
Yeah, I would,
because we're going to spread the ball around to our wide receivers.
Yeah, I would lean a little bit towards getting more of an all-around tight end because you have Brate, who's more of the receiving. Otton still remains to be seen. He's a little bit more of that all-around, as we were talking about. Kieft, we know, is going to be blocking. And McElroy, as we talked about on yesterday's show, for all of the size and everything that he has, he's not that physical and not much of a blocker. So I would like to have that little insurance policy of, all right, we have another guy that we know, even on passing plays, just give a chip shot to the edge rusher or can stay in and block and let Cam Brate go and do his thing. If it's between Graham and Cook, I would go with Cook. I just think Graham I know they're both up there in age, but it seems like Cook still has a little more tread on the tires. I like the
certainly
target
as a
that
receiver,
he has.
Yeah.
And I think with Graham, it would telegraph it a lot more. I'm not saying Cook's a good blocker either. I just think when Graham's in the game, you automatically know, all right, he's not blocking. He's going out for a pass. And I think that could help defenses game planning, especially, if it's not a third down and you think, the Bucs might not have them in a situation where they want because they know, all right, Jimmy Graham's here, probably not running the ball or definitely not running to his side. So let's stack up on the other side. Cook, I think he's got a good frame, and you talked about still having productive numbers in 2019. I know that's a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
But I think, again, playing with Tom Brady, Tom gets the best out of players, and he's worked with a lot of veteran guys and helped, for lack of a better term, rejuvenate their career a little bit. And I think Cook could really be that type of guy that would benefit from playing with Tom Brady. He's already played with a lot of great quarterbacks in this league, so why not add another to the list?
Yeah. Eric Ebron's another player, age 29.
Yeah.
Drafted by the Lions in the first round in 2014, really never lived up to that first round billing. Spent 4 years in Detroit before moving on to the Colts in 2018 after 2 seasons in Indy. He spent the last 2 years in Pittsburgh, 6'4", 253. He's talented enough to stay in the league, but he's really a journeyman at this point, and he signed a 2-year, $12 million deal with the Steelers. After catching 56 passes for 558 yards, which is it's an average 10 yards per catch, and 5 touchdowns, last year really fell off. 12 receptions, 84 yards, only a 7-yard average, and 1 touchdown. So at some point in time, you fall off the cliff as a veteran in this league. It happens to different players at different ages, and it might have happened last year to Eric Ebron. So he's another guy that I talked about in that article. Kyle Rudolph, if you're looking for a guy that can block and get after it in the blocking game and do enough as a receiver, this might be the guy. He kind of reminds me, and I'm dating myself here, but kind of reminds me of Ken Dilger when he came from the Indianapolis Colts to the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl season, right? He was at the end of his career, didn't do much as a receiver, but did enough. And then did enough as a blocker in the running game. They also had Ricky Dudley, who was more of a receiving tight end. But both of those were aging veterans at the tight end spot. Dilger obviously had a great downfield block on Joe Juravic's "Go, Joe, go, Joe!" That big 73-yard catch and run in Philadelphia in that NFC Championship game that helped give the Buccaneers their first touchdown in Philly and in the playoffs. That was a Mike Allstott touchdown run. So if you look at Kyle Rudolph, still has something in the tank. I think he's 32, spent the first 10 years in Minnesota, then was with the Giants last year, signed a 1-year deal for just over $4.5 million. A bigger guy, Matt, 6'6", 265 pounds, caught 26 passes for 257 yards. It's a 9.9 yard average and 1 touchdown. Again, Rudolph is not going to wow you as a receiver anymore. He hasn't had a season with 400 yards or more receiving since 2018. He's been a 2-time Pro Bowler, but that's in the rearview mirror, 2012 and 2017. But Matt, your thoughts on Kyle Rudolph?
It's so funny, Scott, because I remember doing a podcast with Pewter Report alumni John Ledyard when we were at Indy for the Combine, and there was a recent story. There was a report about Gronk potentially having interest in going to the Bills, so the conversation naturally transitioned to, okay, well, does this mean the Bucs would bring in a guy? And one of the players that we really talked about was Kyle Rudolph. And we were in agreement. You're clearly not getting the Kyle Rudolph that he was in the beginning of his career with Minnesota. It's funny because towards the end of his time with Minnesota and with the Giants, towards the end of Minnesota, he always seemed like he was good for like 1 or 2 red zone touchdowns where it'd be like the defense does an all-out blitz, play action, Kyle Rudolph wide open in the corner of the end zone. And you just mentioned his stats a moment ago with the Giants. Again, he was a second string guy there. The Giants already had their top tight end with Evan Ingram. And I think we have to remember that any of these veterans that the Bucs are signing, they're not coming in to be tight end 1. So we don't, or the Bucs don't need to have a guy that's going to produce 1,000 yards and score double-digit touchdowns. I think Kyle Rudolph, as the second or third string, depends on what happens with Cade Otton. I like him in that role because of the players that we talked about. He is the most suitable for doing a little bit of everything. Do I think he's going to have a 100-yard receiving game with the Bucs if he were to sign in Tampa Bay? No, I don't. But I think he could make a crucial third down catch when you need it. I think he could be a nice little security blanket to Tom Brady on a play where everyone else is covered, and he's going to catch the ball and move it up the field and try not to do anything stupid with it. So I do like Kyle. I was about to say Kyle Trask. I do like Kyle Rudolph in a role of second or third string tight end. Be a veteran presence for Cade Otton. Cam Brate will, but bring in another veteran presence when you have 2 tight ends. I think that would be such a huge help to the other guys in the room.
Yeah, Common Sensei says, I think the Giants made him look worse than he is. That's certainly a possibility. Daniel Jones will do that. He's no Tom Brady by any means. Jacko Bluntly says, let's roll with the young guys, go Bucs. I think that the problem with that is if something happens to Cam Brate, right, you are completely without a veteran presence in that tight end room. And I think that's what the Bucs would like to safeguard against, because what the veterans do in the room is that they act like another coach, especially on the field when the coach is doing a one-on-one talking with one tight end. A guy like Cam Brate is going to be huddled up with the other ones, right? And just in the locker room, in the weight room, in the training room, when they're getting, their ankles taped up before practice, things like that. That's where you get those little words of wisdom and the confidence building, words from veterans. And so I think this team is going to sign another veteran tight end. I think they like the young guys, but Tom Brady, man, like this is the year, right?
And if Cam Brate goes down, as he said, what does that make? Cody McElroy, the veteran in the in the room, and no disrespect,
he might be in the practice squad again.
Yeah, and he's only played a couple of regular season games in the NFL. So
literally
so there's things that Cody McElroy could tell Cade Otton and Kieft just about being an NFL player and the day in and day out grind that it is. But as far as like in-game experience, I don't necessarily think Cody McElroy can help a ton in that matter. So that's where, guys like Kyle Rudolph or Jared Cook or Ebron too is such an interesting case because he showed some flashes of like, oh, he might still have it that first year with Pittsburgh. And then, because I remember like for fantasy football, a couple of times I'd have to spot start him at tight end if another tight end was injured. And he had a couple of okay games, but then last year with the Steelers, they drafted Pat Freiermuth, and he essentially became the number 1 guy. And then, it was just nothing for Ebron. So I wouldn't necessarily take a flyer on him. I think, as I said, Rudolph
or Cook, one of those 2 guys, and Rudolph's that kind of Ken Dilger all-around guy. And it can really help you in the blocking game. Jared Cook, if you want another wide receiver, essentially, for Tom Brady, I mean, that guy catches a ton of passes. The last guy I mentioned in the article was Blake Jarwin. And, not terribly impressed with Blake Jarwin. Spent 5 seasons, technically. One of those seasons, he was not on the roster, but 4 years essentially in Dallas, was not re-signed. Jarwin's got the least amount of playing experience and production. He's 27 years old. He's got just 70 catches for 780 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, both of those touchdowns came last year. He played in 8 games, caught 11 passes for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns, but just really kind of like an outlier. I think there was better players that we mentioned that could come in and help the Buccaneers. And again, I think they're looking for a veteran on a 1-year deal to come in during this Tom Brady Super Bowl window still open season and help. And I think it might be Rudolph or it might be Cook. Those would be my 2 guesses right now. Or this team could make a trade. We haven't had time in preparing for this podcast and getting the news up on pewterreport.com to really kind of delve into some legitimate trade possibilities. We might do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
But so far those are probably the best options that are left in free agency.
Agreed. And you had a great article, put it in the chat earlier about possible veteran options for the Bucs in free agency at tight end. It seems like the Bucs will be looking for a veteran tight end via free agency or through the trade. And something you should be looking for to do is go to pin chasers. Guys, today's the first day of summer. You know how hot it can get here in Tampa, Florida. Or if you're watching from somewhere else, you know how hot it can be just anytime in the summer. And the beauty of pin chasers is they got the AC blasting all the time. So when it gets really hot to the point where you can't be outside for too long, pin chasers is the perfect place to go because it's more than just a bowling alley. It's a great night or day out with friends and family. You could book a birthday party there. If you have a kid, they got the bowling lanes, obviously, and they got a arcade area too. So kids can bowl and play video games at the same time. Multiple different locations, as you see, East Pasco, Zephyr Hills, Midtown, and Veterans. The food is underrated. You got great pizza, nachos, chicken tendies. There's one that's not far away from the Bucs facility, the Advent Health Training Center, and they got deals all the time. All you could eat pizza, all you can bowl, $1 Miller Lights. They got brunch on the weekends. So, like I said, a great day and or night out with friends and family. Make sure you go to pinchasers.net to reserve a lane or book a party and see all of the great deals that they have because there's literally every one for every single night. And you won't be disappointed by going to Pin Chasers. Again, that's pinchasers.net.
Yeah, real quick, just took a glance at 2 teams' rosters. When you think about tight ends in the NFL these days, the Baltimore Ravens, like that's the team that has the greatest collection of tight ends. They love the position more than any other team. And they drafted 2 of them this year. Didn't even draft a wide receiver after losing Hollywood Brown. But damn it, they drafted 2 tight ends. Oh, and by the way, they already have a Pro Bowl tight end in Mark Andrews. So aside from Mark Andrews, who's still young and in his prime, 26 years old, 5 years into the league out of Oklahoma, they've got 2 rookies that they drafted. They're not going to part ways with them. Charlie Kolar from Iowa State and Isaiah Likely from Coastal Carolina. So when you look at that Ravens depth chart, maybe they keep 5 because they don't have any receivers outside of Rashad Bateman. But one of these guys, it could be acquired via trade or whatever. Nick Boyle is a veteran who's been in this league out of Delaware, 8 years, 6'4", 270 pounds. He might be a player that the Bucs might have some interest in. Tony Polian from Virginia. I liked him coming out of college. 6'7", 251. Doesn't have a lot of experience. Not really going to help out too much in that regards. The other team, though, Matt, is the Cardinals, right? They just drafted a player the Buccaneers were very high on in Trey McBride. Why is that significant? Well, because they've re-signed Max Williams, who was one of their starters. And remember, they traded for Zach Ertz last year, right?
Yeah.
So they've got Zach Ertz, they've got Max Williams, they've got Trey McBride, a couple of other tight ends that I really don't know too much about on there, except for this guy that was in Tampa for a while, Dion Yelder, right? He was a practice squad player. I think he was up for a game or 2 last year. Formerly played with the Kansas City Chiefs, fourth-year player, 27 years of age, 6'4", 255. Did they like him enough to bring him back maybe? Is he a player that you could slip a seventh-round pick to Arizona? Remember, Jason Light is very good friends with Steve Keim. They worked together out there with the Cardinals for years. So the Cardinals with McBride, Ertz, and Williams already on that depth chart, Deion Yelder might be a player because he was in Tampa to keep an eye on. So those are a couple of names. Wanted to throw those out to you here before we wrap up today's podcast.
Yelder is part of the 3-6 Mafia of March 6 birthdays that include him, Kyle Trask, myself, and Bucs team writer Scott Smith. He'd be going back to the 3-6 Mafia in Tampa. Another guy I see a couple people in the chat mentioning would be another return of Tanner Hudson. I don't think that would be the best case scenario for the Bucs because he's a receiving tight end. Obviously had a lot of issues with blocking. I know Bruce Arians is pretty vocal about that. Todd Bowles, the head coach now, but I think the sentiment remains the same. I wouldn't necessarily look into a reunion with Tanner Hudson, but there are going to be options out there, and I think Yelder really could be one, and has familiarity with the offense. I think that's important moving forward because it's not always the easiest offense to pick up and get going. So to get a head start with Yelder back on the team, I think would be a good idea.
Long lost leisure, thinking outside the box. I love it. Ali Marpet is small enough now to play tight end, only a blocking tight end. You won't have to bang around with defensive tackles. He can find light work on the edges. Love that. Love your contributions, long lost leisure, and everybody who's a regular here in the Pewter Report chat. We also love new visitors too. And we ask those new visitors, if you haven't done so yet, holy smokes, man. We got this awesome YouTube channel called Pewter Report TV. That might be where you're watching today's show. Or if you aren't watching it live, if you're listening to the podcast version or watching it, I should say, it might be on Pewter Report TV. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the like button on all of our videos. That helps us out tremendously, helps us get in front of other awesome Pewter people like you. And so hit the like button on today's video, on any video that you watch on pewterreport.com. The more likes we get, that helps our algorithm on YouTube and helps increase our popularity. And we're approaching 8,600 now on our subscriber account. So our goal is to get to 9,000 by the start of Bucs season, and then 10,000 by the end of the year. So that's the goal. We've appreciated everybody who's contributed to that so far. If you're a newbie or if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. That helps us out a lot.
Yeah, and one of our most recent videos that we have outside of the Pewter Report podcast that uploaded earlier today, it's a brief clip from yesterday's episode where we talked about how and why Jalen Darden is the most exciting wide receiver on the Bucs outside of the big three of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Russell Gage. So make sure you check out that video and check out a lot of the other things we have there. Just had a video reach 10,000 views. That was our discussion about Warren Sapp coaching up Logan Hall and what he loved about Logan Hall. So keep on hitting the like button, keep on subscribing, tell your friends about it, and help us push all of our content at pewterreport.com and Pewter Report TV to other Bucs fans and NFL fans that want to just get more info about this team here in Tampa Bay. Scott, we got another big show tomorrow.
Yes.
I think it could be the best show yet.
I think you're right. I'm going to say today's show was pretty epic. It was probably the best Pewter Report podcast we've done yet. And the great thing is, I think we have one on tap tomorrow that's actually going to top this one. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. For Matt Matera, I'm Scott Reynolds. We'll see you tomorrow, another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.